As Iran's missile arsenal survives weeks of strikes, questions grow over whether Netanyahu now fears a fresh attack more than ever. Critics accuse Netanyahu of bunker politics, saying he's not ready to face the public while the Iran threat looms large. Opponents claim Israel's prime minister doesn't want to step out, amid mounting fears of another strike from Iran. Netanyahu points to the Iran crisis as his corruption trial once again slams on the brakes, fueling anger among his critics. With Iran's new hardline regime emerging even stronger after the war, Israeli media ask, is the IDF quietly warning Bibi about what comes next? Amid rising regional tensions, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has moved to delay the latest stage of his long-running corruption trial. Netanyahu has formally requested a postponement of his court testimony, which had been scheduled to resume on April 10th. His legal team has argued that ongoing security challenges, particularly those linked to the current conflict involving Iran, make his appearance in court impossible for now, according to reports. In a filing to the Jerusalem court, they stated that the Prime Minister would be unavailable to testify for at least an additional 2 weeks. Jerusalem District Court filing read, and I quote, "Due to classified security and diplomatic reasons connected to the dramatic events that have taken place in the State of Israel and throughout the Middle East in recent times, the Prime Minister will not be able to testify in a proceeding for at least the next 2 weeks." Unquote. Netanyahu's lawyers have submitted additional material to the court, outlining what they describe as sensitive diplomatic and security considerations to justify the requested delay. The Jerusalem District Court is expected to review the request only after it receives and studies the prosecution's formal response. The proceedings had been scheduled to resume on April 5th, after authorities lifted special emergency measures imposed during the recent war. Despite Netanyahu's request, defense lawyers have indicated they are ready to continue hearing the testimony of a prosecution witness. Netanyahu has consistently denied the allegations of bribery, fraud, and breach of trust that were filed against him in 2019 following years of investigations. He remains the first sitting Israeli prime minister ever to be charged with criminal offenses while still in office, a historic and deeply polarizing milestone. The trial, which began in 2020 and could carry potential jail time, has faced repeated delays tied to Netanyahu's official responsibilities and overlapping national crises. The ongoing war and regional instability have further complicated scheduling, prolonging uncertainty over when the case will finally conclude. Political pressure on Netanyahu has mounted in the wake of the Hamas attacks and subsequent regional escalation, with critics accusing him of mishandling the crisis. Adding to the sense of turmoil, Judge Benny Sagi, a senior jurist linked to the broader Netanyahu corruption proceedings, was killed on January 5th when a vehicle plowed into his motorcycle on Route 6. Recent opinion polls suggest that Netanyahu's governing coalition could face significant electoral losses in the next national elections if public anger continues to grow. As the U.S. boasts of having decimated Iran's military, a new analysis is openly questioning whether Washington ever grasped the true scale of the IRGC's missile power. On April 7th, Trump declared that the U.S. had met and exceeded all its military objectives in the Iran war and could pause bombing from a position of strength. His Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, doubled down by calling Operation Epic Fury a capital V victory that left Iran's military combat ineffective for years.
President Trump forged this moment. Iran begged for this ceasefire, and we all know it. As the President truth this morning, a big day for world peace. Iran wants it to happen. They've had enough. Operation Epic Fury was a historic and overwhelming victory on the battlefield. A capital V military victory. By any measure, Epic Fury decimated Iran's military and rendered it combat ineffective for years to come.
However, Brazil-based analyst Patricia Murrins argues that Western counts of Iran's missiles are wildly understated and ignore decades of serial production. During last year's 12-day conflict, Murrins estimated Iran's stockpile at close to 20,000 missiles, not a few thousand. Her breakdown pointed to roughly 7,000 to 8,000 ballistic missiles and 12,000 to 13,000 cruise missiles in various roles. Those figures, she says, include both active operational rounds and large numbers held in reserve across Iran's dispersed depots. Murrins notes that Iran began mass-producing Shahab-2 missiles in the early 1990s and kept those lines running for around 15 years. Shahab-3 then entered production from about 2004 to 2008, before being edged out by more modern, longer-range systems. In 2015, Tehran launched a major program to upgrade guidance systems on older missiles rather than scrap them. As a result, thousands of legacy missiles were modernized and pushed into reserve stocks instead of being retired. By roughly 2010, Iran had around a dozen different ballistic and cruise missile models in production at the same time. By 2010, Iran had about 12 missile models in active production, using multiple lines to push out different systems at the same time. Those parallel lines meant Tehran could sustain output across families of missiles rather than relying on a single flagship weapon. After 2015, between 8 and 12 missile types with ranges above 1,000 kilometers reportedly entered or stayed in active production. Long-range cruise missiles such as Sumar and Meshkat are believed to exceed 2,000 kilometers, putting distant bases and cities in reach. Solid fuel systems like Ahmad and Sejal also crossed the 2,000, allowing fast, survivable launches from deep inside Iran. Together, these standoff systems let Iran strike targets across the region without ever sending a manned jet near hostile defenses. Murrins flatly rejects Western think tank claims that Iran had only about 2,500 missiles in stockpile at the start of this war. She calls those lowball estimates illogical, given Iran's decades of mass production and multiple simultaneous assembly lines. On what she describes as a conservative calculation, Murrins argues Iran's arsenal now exceeds 17,000 missiles. Patricia Murrins said, and I quote, "If we assume a conservative average production rate of roughly 100 units per model per year, taking into account multiple parallel production lines, that alone would give Iran, over the last 15 years, an arsenal exceeding 17,000 missiles. There is simply no logic in claiming that Iran, after more than 30 years of dedicated missile production with multiple active lines, had only 2,500 missiles in stockpile as of February, as many Western think tanks claim. These estimates consistently understate Iran's real industrial capacity. Iran has an entire ecosystem of public companies, private firms, and startups, with more than 300 companies dedicated to the missile sector, out of a total of another 6,500 that support the country's defense in various areas." Unquote.